Jake Miller stood at the entrance of Westlake High School with his backpack slung over one shoulder. His stomach felt tight as he looked at the brick building where he would spend the rest of his junior year. Moving to a new town in the middle of the school year was never easy. This was his third school in 5 years, and he knew the drill by now. Keep your head down, stay quiet, and try to blend in. The morning air was cool as Jake walked up the concrete steps. Other students pushed past him, laughing and talking with friends they had known for years. No one noticed the new kid, and that was exactly how Jake wanted it. He pulled out the schedule the office had emailed him and looked for his first class. American History with Mr. Collins in room 203. Jake made his way through the crowded hallways, his eyes scanning everything. He noticed the groups of students at their lockers, the security cameras in the corners, and all possible exits. These observations were automatic for him now, a habit his father had taught him. Always know your surroundings, his dad would say. It's the first rule of staying safe. When Jake found room 203, most seats were already taken. He chose an empty desk in the back corner and sat down quietly. A few students glanced his way, but most were too busy with their phones or friends to pay attention to him. Mr. Collins, a tall man with glasses and a friendly smile, started the class by introducing Jake. Everyone, we have a new student joining us today. This is Jake Miller. Jake, welcome to Westlake High. All eyes turned to Jake. He nodded slightly and said, thanks. He hated being the center of attention, but he knew this moment would pass quickly. It always did. As Mr. Collins began his lecture about the Civil War, Jake felt someone watching him. 3 rows ahead, a boy with spiky blonde hair and a Letterman jacket kept turning to look at him. The boy whispered something to his friend, and they both laughed while staring at Jake. Jake ignored them and focused on taking notes. When the bell rang, Jake gathered his books and headed for the door. As he stepped into the hallway, someone bumped hard into his shoulder, making him drop his history textbook. Watch where you're going, new kid, said the boy with the spiky hair. His friend laughed beside him. Jake picked up his book without saying anything. He could feel his heart beating faster, but his face remained calm. He had dealt with guys like this before. I'm Steve, the boy said, blocking Jake's path. Steve Daniels. You should know that since I run things around here. Jake looked at Steve directly, not showing any fear. Excuse me, he said politely but firmly. I need to get to my next class. Steve seemed surprised by Jake's calm response. He moved aside but called after him. See you around, new kid. Jake's next class was math, where he sat next to a girl with dark curly hair who introduced herself as Olivia Martinez. Don't mind Steve and his friends, she said as they worked on algebra problems. They act tough with everyone, especially new students. I'm used to it, Jake replied with a small smile. Olivia was easy to talk to. By lunchtime, she had invited Jake to sit with her and her friends in the cafeteria. They seemed nice, asking him normal questions about where he moved from and what he liked to do. Jake gave simple answers, sharing only what felt safe. I moved here from Colorado because of my dad's job, he told them. He works in security consulting. Jake didn't mention that his father was actually a former military combat instructor who now trained law enforcement officers. He also didn't mention the real reason they moved so often: to leave behind the memories of what happened to his mother 6 years ago. After lunch, Jake had gym class. The teacher, Coach Phillips, told everyone they would be playing basketball. As teams were being picked, Jake stood quietly, knowing he would be chosen last as the new kid. To his surprise, he was picked third by a tall boy named Ryan, who had been friendly at lunch. On the court, Jake played well, but not too well. He moved quickly and made good passes. He could have scored more points, but he held back. Years of martial arts training had made him fast and strong, but Jake never showed his full abilities unless he had to. Steve Daniels was on the opposite team, playing aggressively and showing off. Whenever he scored, he made sure everyone noticed. Near the end of the game, Steve drove toward the basket where Jake was defending. Jake stood his ground and Steve crashed into him, sending them both to the floor. Foul, Coach Phillips called. Out. Daniels, take it easy. Steve got up, glaring at Jake. You got in my way on purpose, he said under his breath. Jake didn't respond. He simply got back into position and continued playing. His father's words echoed in his mind. The strongest fighter is the one who knows when not to fight. After gym, Jake was getting books from his new locker when he heard laughter behind him. Steve and 3 of his friends were standing there watching him. Nice backpack, new kid, Steve said, pointing at Jake's worn blue backpack. Did you get it from a garage sale? His friends laughed loudly. Jake continued organizing his locker, trying to ignore them. Hey, I'm talking to you, Steve said, stepping closer. Jake turned around calmly. Is there something you need? He asked. Just checking out the fresh meat, Steve replied with a smirk. You don't say much, do you? Are you scared? The hallway was getting quiet as other students stopped to watch. I'm not scared, Jake said simply. I just don't see the point in this conversation. Steve's face reddened. He wasn't used to new kids standing up to him even in such a quiet way. He reached out and pushed Jake's shoulder against the locker. You should be scared, Steve warned, for Ikkyo. A brief moment, Jake's eyes changed. Something cold and focused flashed in them, but it disappeared quickly. He controlled his breathing the way his sensei had taught him years ago. His hands stayed relaxed at his sides, though they could have moved in ways Steve couldn't imagine. First day and you're already making enemies, Miller? Coach Phillips's voice broke the tension as he walked down the hallway. Everything okay? Here? Yes, Coach, Steve said, backing away with his friends. Just welcoming the new guy. Coach Phillips looked at Jake with concern. You good, Miller? Jake nodded. I'm fine, sir. As Steve and his friends walked away, Olivia appeared next. To Jake. Those guys are jerks, she said. Don't let them get to you. They don't, Jake assured her. After school, Jake walked home alone. Their new house was only 15 minutes from school. As he walked, he thought about his first day. It was always the same at every school. There were always guys like Steve, who saw quiet new kids as easy targets. At home, Jake found his dad in the garage setting up a heavy punching bag. How was your first day? His father asked. Same as usual, Jake replied, dropping his backpack on the floor. Some kids tried to mess with me. His father studied Jake's face. And nothing. I walked away. His father nodded with approval. Good. Remember, I know, Dad, Jake said with a small smile. Fighting is always the last option. That's right, his father said, handing Jake a pair of hand wraps. But just in case, let's make sure you're ready. Jake began wrapping his hands, a routine he had followed since he was 10 years old. As he faced the punching bag, he thought about Steve Daniels and his friends. They had no idea who they were messing with. Jake had been training in mixed martial arts for 6 years. He had won junior championships and trained with professional fighters during their time in Colorado. But that wasn't something Jake talked about. It wasn't something he showed off. It was a part of him he kept hidden, just like the pain of losing his mother and the nightmares that still came sometimes. Jake threw his first punch at the bag, feeling the familiar power flow through his body. He would continue to avoid trouble at school. He would be patient with Steve and his friends. He would stay quiet and keep to himself. But if they pushed too far, if they left him no choice, they would learn that the new kid they thought was an easy target was actually the most dangerous person in the school. 2 weeks passed since Jake's first day at Westlake High. He settled into a routine, going to classes and keeping to himself. Most students had already forgotten he was new. They saw him as the quiet kid who sat in the back of the classroom and rarely spoke unless called on by teachers. Jake ate lunch with Olivia and her friends most days. He liked their company because they didn't ask too many questions. Ryan, the tall boy from gym class, often talked about basketball and video games. Olivia shared stories about growing up in the town and complained about difficult homework. They were normal kids with normal lives, and Jake enjoyed feeling like one of them, even if only for a little while. But Steve Daniels and his friends hadn't forgotten about Jake. Every day, they found small ways to bother him. They knocked his books off his desk when walking by. They whispered comments when he answered questions in class. They blocked his way in the hallway, forcing him to walk around them. Jake ignored it all. He had dealt with worse at other schools. His father always told him that most conflicts died out if you didn't feed them with reactions. So far, this approach had worked. Steve seemed annoyed that Jake never got angry or scared, but the bullying hadn't gotten worse. Until Friday afternoon. Jake was at his locker, putting away his books before heading home. The hallway was nearly empty as most students had already left for the weekend. He felt someone approach from behind but didn't turn around. "Hey, new kid." Steve's voice was louder than usual. "I'm talking to you." Jake closed his locker and turned, to find Steve standing there with 4 of his friends. All of them wore the same blue and white Letterman jackets. They formed a half circle around Jake, blocking his exit. "Can I help you with something?" Jake asked calmly. Steve stepped closer. "Yeah, you can. See, I've been watching you for 2 weeks now. You think you're better than everyone else, don't you? Walking around, not talking to people, acting all mysterious." "I'm just trying to get through the school year," Jake said. One of Steve's friends, a boy named Pete with red hair, laughed. "Hear that? He's just trying to get through the school year." "The thing is," Steve continued, "I don't like your attitude. You don't show proper respect." Jake took a deep breath. "I don't want any trouble." "Too bad," Steve said, "because trouble found you." He shoved Jake hard against the lockers. The metal rattled loudly in the empty hallway. Jake's backpack fell to the floor, and a few books spilled out. Jake looked at each of the 5 boys surrounding him. They were bigger than him, except for Pete, who was skinny but tall. Jake knew he could handle them if he needed to, but he also knew it would cause problems he didn't want. 5 against 1, Jake said. "That seems fair." Steve's face turned red. "Are you calling us cowards?" "I'm not calling you anything," Jake replied. "I'm just trying to go home." "Not until we teach you some manners," Steve said. He nodded to his friends and they moved closer. Jake tensed, preparing himself. His mind calculated distances, positions, potential movements. His training kicked in automatically, but before anything could happen, a voice called out from down the hall. "What's going on here?" Coach Phillips walked toward them, his keys jingling at his side. The boys immediately backed away from Jake. "Nothing, Coach," Steve said quickly. "Just talking to Miller." Coach Phillips looked at the scene. Jake's fallen backpack, the 5 boys surrounding him, the tense atmosphere. "Doesn't look like talking to me," the coach said. "All of you go home. It's Friday afternoon. Find something better to do with your time." Steve and his friends moved away, but Steve pointed at Jake. "See you Monday," he said quietly. After they left, Coach Phillips helped Jake pick up his books. "You okay, Miller?" "Yes, sir," Jake said. "Thank you." The coach studied Jake's face. "Those boys giving you trouble?" Jake hesitated. He didn't want to be labeled as a snitch, but he also didn't want to lie to a teacher who had just helped him. "Nothing. I can't handle," he finally said. Coach Phillips nodded slowly. "I've seen boys like Daniels before. They pick on the quiet ones, the new kids. But there's something different about you, Miller. You're not scared of them, are you?" Jake met the coach's eyes. "No, sir. Thought so." Coach Phillips handed Jake the last book. "You know, we have a small boxing club that meets after school on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Might be good for you. Gives you something to do. Keeps you out of trouble." "I'll think about it," Jake said. "Do that," the coach replied. "And Miller, if those boys bother you again, let me know." Jake walked home slowly that day, thinking about what had happened. He knew Steve wouldn't stop now. The confrontation would only get worse. Jake considered telling his dad, but he didn't want to worry him. His father worked hard at his new job, and Jake didn't want to add more stress. When he got home, Jake went straight to the garage. The punching bag his father had set up swung slightly in the breeze from the open door. Jake dropped his backpack, wrapped his hands, and began hitting the bag. Each punch was controlled, precise. He moved around the bag with quick steps, his body flowing from years of practice. This was his release. This was where he could let out all the frustration and anger he kept hidden at school. The feeling of his fists connecting with the bag, the burn in his muscles, the sweat on his forehead, it all helped him stay calm when people like Steve tried to provoke him. An hour later, Jake heard his father's car pull into the driveway. He stopped training and wiped his face with a towel as his dad entered the garage. "Good session?" his father asked, watching Jake unwrap his hands. "Yeah," Jake said. "Just needed to blow off some steam." His father leaned against the wall. "School. Problems?" Jake shrugged. "The usual. Some guys think I'm an easy target." "And are you?" his father asked with a slight smile. Despite himself, Jake smiled back. "No?" "Good." His father grabbed 2 water bottles from a small fridge in the corner and handed one to Jake. "Just remember what we've talked about. Your training is for protection, not aggression," Jake finished. "I know, Dad." They went inside and made dinner together. As they ate, Jake's father talked about his new job and asked about school. Jake told him about his classes and mentioned Olivia and Ryan, but said nothing about Steve and his friends. That night, Jake lay in bed thinking about Coach Phillips's invitation to join the boxing club. Maybe it was a good idea. It would give him a place to train properly, and it might help him make more friends. Jake had always been careful about showing his fighting skills at school, but in a boxing club, it would be expected. As he fell asleep, Jake decided he would check out the club on Tuesday. He also decided that if Steve and his friends confronted him again, he would try once more to walk away. But if they pushed too far, he wouldn't hide what he could do. Not anymore. Monday morning came quickly. Jake walked to school earlier than usual, hoping to avoid any confrontation before classes started. The hallways were nearly empty when he arrived. He went to his locker, got his books, and headed to his first class. He was the first student there. Mr. Collins looked up from his desk in surprise. "Early bird today, Jake?" "Yes, sir," Jake replied, taking his usual seat in the back. As other students filed in, Jake noticed Steve and 2 of his friends enter. Steve saw Jake and smirked, but didn't say anything. Throughout the class, Jake could feel Steve watching him, but nothing happened. The morning passed normally. By lunchtime, Jake began to think maybe Steve had forgotten about Friday's confrontation. He sat with Olivia and her friends eating his sandwich while Ryan talked about the upcoming basketball game. "You should come," Ryan said to Jake. "It's against our biggest rivals." "Maybe," Jake said. Olivia touched Jake's arm suddenly. "Don't. Look now. But Steve Daniels is staring at you." Jake didn't need to look. He could feel it. "Just ignore him." "Why does he hate you so much?" Olivia asked. "You've never done anything to him." Jake shrugged. "Some people just need someone to pick on. Makes them feel important." "Well, it's stupid," Olivia said. "And he better be careful. My brother had a class with a kid last year who transferred from another school. Everyone thought he was quiet and shy until someone pushed him too far. Turns out he was a 2nd-degree black belt in karate." Jake nearly choked on his water. He caught himself and tried to look normal. "What happened?" "The bully ended up with a broken nose," Olivia said. "Got what he deserved, if you ask me." Jake nodded but said nothing more. If only she knew how close her story was to his reality. Tuesday afternoon came, and Jake decided to check out the boxing club Coach Phillips had mentioned. After his last class, he went to the gym and found about 10 students already there. Some were hitting punching bags while others practiced footwork in the center of the room. Coach Phillips stood nearby giving advice to a younger student. When the coach saw Jake, he smiled and waved him over. "Miller, you decided to join us." "Just watching today, if that's okay," Jake said. "Sure thing. Feel free to jump in if you want." Coach Phillips turned back to the student he was helping. Jake set his backpack down and leaned against the wall. He watched the other students train, noticing their techniques. Most were beginners with basic skills. A few showed more experience. One boy, a senior Jake recognized from the hallways, moved with confidence around the punching bag. His name was Eric, and he seemed to be the best boxer in the group. After 15 minutes of watching, Jake felt someone stand beside him. "You going to train or just stare?" Eric asked. His tone wasn't unfriendly, just curious. "Just watching today?" "Jake," replied. Eric nodded. You ever boxed before? Jake shrugged. A little. You should try it, Eric said. It's a good way to stay in shape. Also keeps guys like Daniels off your back. Jake looked at him in surprise. You know about that? Eric laughed. Everyone knows. Steve likes an audience when he picks on someone new. He studied Jake for a moment. You don't seem scared of him, though. I'm not, Jake said simply. Interesting. Eric grabbed a pair of gloves from a nearby rack and tossed them to Jake. Come on, show me what you know. Jake caught the gloves, but hesitated. He didn't want to show too much of his skill, but he also wanted to fit in with the club. Just some light sparring, Eric said, seeing Jake's hesitation. No pressure. Jake put on the gloves while Eric called to Coach Phillips. Coach, is it okay if the new guy and I do some light sparring? Coach Phillips looked over. Miller, you up for that? Jake nodded. All right, but keep it light. Eric, no showing off. They moved to an empty mat in the corner of the gym. Other students noticed and stopped to watch. Jake and Eric faced each other, gloves raised. Just tap, don't hit hard, Eric said. Let's see your form. They began moving around each other. Eric threw a light jab, which Jake easily avoided. Jake responded with a soft jab of his own, making minimal contact with Eric's shoulder. They continued this way for a few minutes, testing each other with simple combinations. Jake was careful to show only basic boxing skills, nothing that would reveal his full training. Still, his natural speed and balance were hard to hide completely. When Eric threw a quick three-punch combination, Jake blocked and countered without thinking, his body moving from muscle memory. Eric stepped back, eyebrows raised. You've done more than a little boxing. Before Jake could respond, the gym door opened and Steve walked in with two of his friends. They stopped when they saw Jake and Eric sparring. Well, look who's here, Steve said loudly. The new kid thinks he's a fighter. Coach Phillips walked over to Steve. Daniels, you here to train or just talk? We're here to train, Coach, Steve said, but his eyes stayed on Jake. The rest of the session, Jake felt Steve watching him. Steve worked with one of the punching bags, hitting it harder than necessary, trying to show his strength. Jake continued, light sparring with Eric, still hiding his true abilities. When the club ended, Jake grabbed his backpack and headed for the door. Eric walked with him. You move well, Eric said. You should come back Thursday. Maybe, Jake replied. Outside the gym, Steve and his friends were waiting. Having fun playing boxer? Steve asked. Jake didn't answer. He tried to walk past them, but they blocked his path. I'm talking to you, Steve said, pushing Jake's shoulder. Eric stepped forward. Back off, Daniels. This isn't the place. Steve looked at Eric. Stay out of this, Carter. It's between me and the new kid. Let's go, Jake, Eric said, ignoring Steve. Jake nodded and followed Eric past Steve and his friends. He could feel their eyes on his back as he walked away. This isn't over, Steve called after them. Eric walked with Jake toward the school exit. Daniels has always been a jerk, he said. Last year he picked on my younger brother until I had to step in. What happened? Jake asked. Let's just say he avoided me for the rest of the year. Eric smiled. He only picks fights he thinks he can win. They reached the main doors, and Eric headed to the parking lot while Jake started his walk home. The afternoon was cool and Jake enjoyed the quiet after the noise of the gym. He thought about the boxing club and decided he would go back on Thursday. It felt good to train with others, even if he had to hold back. Jake was halfway home when he heard a car slow down behind him. He turned to see Steve's blue sedan pull up beside him. Steve and three of his friends were inside. Need a ride, new kid? Steve called from the driver's window. No thanks, Jake said, continuing to walk. The car followed him slowly. Don't be like that, Steve said. We just want to talk. Jake didn't respond. He kept walking at the same pace, alert, but calm. Okay, have it your way, Steve said. The car sped up and drove ahead of Jake, turning at the next corner. Jake relaxed slightly but remained cautious. He took a different route home, one that went through a small park. As he walked along the park path, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned to see Steve and his three friends approaching. "Told you we wanted to talk," Steve said. Jake stopped and faced them. They spread out in front of him, blocking the path. Jake set his backpack down slowly. "What do you want, Steve?" he asked. "I want to know who you think you are," Steve said, stepping closer. "Coming to our school, acting all quiet and mysterious, then joining the boxing club like you're some kind of fighter." "I'm just trying to fit in," Jake said. One of Steve's friends laughed. "You're doing a bad job of it." "Here's what's going to happen," Steve continued. "You're going to learn your place at this school, and that place is wherever I say it is." Jake looked at each of them calmly. "I don't want to fight you." "Too bad," Steve said. He nodded to his friends. "Hold him." Two of them moved toward Jake. Without thinking, Jake shifted his stance slightly, balancing his weight evenly on both feet. His hands remained at his sides, but his body was ready. The first boy reached for Jake's arm. Jake stepped aside smoothly, causing the boy to stumble forward. The second boy swung a wild punch. Jake ducked under it easily. "Stop dancing around and fight," Steve said, his face getting red. "I told you I don't want to fight," Jake repeated. Steve charged forward suddenly, throwing a punch aimed at Jake's face. Jake's training took over. He blocked the punch with his forearm and pushed Steve back with his other hand, using just enough force to create distance between them. Steve stumbled but didn't fall. His surprise quickly turned to anger. "Get him!" he yelled to his friends. All three boys rushed Jake at once. Jake sidestepped the first, blocked a punch from the second, and used the third boy's momentum to guide him past. His movements were quick and precise, revealing more of his training than he had intended. Steve watched in confusion as his friends failed to land a single hit on Jake. "What the hell?" Jake kept his breathing steady. He hadn't thrown a single punch yet, only defended himself. "We can stop this now," he said. "Just walk away." "No way," Steve growled. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something that caught the light. A small pocket knife. Jake's eyes narrowed. The situation had just become more serious. "Not so confident now, are you?" Steve said, flicking the knife open. Jake's mind raced. He had trained for situations like this, but he never thought he would face a weapon at school. He calculated his options, knowing he needed to end this quickly before someone got hurt. "Put the knife away, Steve," Jake said, his voice calm, but firm. "You don't want to do this." "Don't tell me what I want," Steve replied, moving closer with the knife held out in front of him. Jake took a deep breath. If Steve came at him with the knife, he would have no choice but to use his full training. Someone could get seriously hurt. Just as Steve took another step forward, a shout came from the park entrance. "Hey, what's going on there?" An older man, walking his dog, had spotted them. Steve quickly closed the knife and put it back in his pocket. "Nothing," he called back. Then he turned to Jake. "This isn't over. Tomorrow at school, you're dead." Steve and his friends backed away, then turned, and ran to where they had parked the car. Jake picked up his backpack, nodded thanks to the man with the dog, and continued walking home. His heart was pounding, not from fear but from adrenaline. The confrontation had nearly forced him to reveal his true abilities, and now Steve was threatening him with even worse tomorrow. Jake knew he had a decision to make. He could tell his father or a teacher about the knife. He could avoid school tomorrow, or he could face whatever Steve had planned and finally stop hiding what he could. As he walked, Jake pulled out his phone and dialed his father's number. This had gone too far to handle alone. Jake's father listened quietly as Jake explained what had happened in the park. They sat at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee in front of his dad and a glass of water for Jake. When Jake mentioned the knife, his father's expression darkened. "Our knife," he repeated. "That crosses the line, Jake." "I know," Jake said. "That's why I called you." His father ran a hand through his short gray hair. "You did the right thing. This isn't something you should handle alone." "What should I do?" Jake asked. "Steve said tomorrow at school." "First we call the principal," his father said, reaching for his phone. "A student bringing a weapon and threatening others needs to be reported immediately." Jake's father made the call, explaining the situation calmly but firmly. The principal promised to address the matter first thing in the morning and asked Jake and his father to come to his office before classes started. After the call, Jake's father looked at him seriously. "Now, tell me honestly, how close were you to using your training on those boys?" Jake looked down at his hands. "Close. If he had come at me with the knife, I wouldn't have had a choice." His father nodded. "You're right. Self-defense against a weapon is different, but I'm glad it didn't come to that." He paused. "Jake, you know why we've been so careful about your training, right?" "Because it's not for showing off," Jake said. "It's for protection." "Yes, but there's more to it." His father leaned forward. "What happened to your mother?" He stopped, the memory still painful for both of them. "After that, I wanted you to be able to protect yourself, but I never wanted you to see violence as the answer." Jake nodded. 6 years ago, his mother had been killed during a convenience store robbery. Jake had been with her, hiding behind a shelf as the robber attacked her for trying to protect the young cashier. Jake had been helpless, too young and too scared to help. The memory still haunted his dreams. "I understand, Dad," Jake said. "I've tried to walk away every time." "I know you have," his father said, putting a hand on Jake's shoulder. "I'm proud of you for that. But sometimes, walking away isn't enough. Tomorrow we'll talk to the principal. After that, we'll see what happens." That night, Jake had trouble sleeping. He kept thinking about Steve and the knife, about his mother, and about all the years of training that had followed her death. His father had started teaching him self-defense shortly after the funeral. What began as basic moves had grown into serious training in mixed martial arts as Jake showed natural talent and dedication. Jake had won junior championships in Colorado and trained with professional fighters. But his father always emphasized discipline and restraint. "The best fight," he often said, "is the one you avoid." Until now, Jake had managed to avoid serious fights at every school they attended. But tomorrow might be different. In the morning, Jake and his father arrived at school early. The principal, Mr. Barnes, was waiting for them in his office. He was a tall man with a serious face but kind eyes. "Jake, Mr. Miller, thank you for coming in," Mr. Barnes said, gesturing to the chairs in front of his desk. "I've already called Steve Daniels and his parents. They should be here shortly." Jake felt nervous. He hadn't expected to face Steve with their parents present. "Can you tell me exactly what happened yesterday?" Mr. Barnes asked. Jake explained everything, from the incident at his locker to the confrontation in the park. He was careful to include every detail, especially about the knife. Mr. Barnes took notes, his expression growing more concerned. "And you're certain it was a knife?" "Yes, sir," Jake said. He opened it and pointed it at me. Just then there was a knock at the door. Mr. Barnes's secretary opened it. "Steve Daniels and his parents are here." "Send them in," Mr. Barnes said. Steve walked in with a man and woman who looked tired and angry. The man, Steve's father, was wearing work clothes with a name tag that said Frank. The woman, Steve's mother, had her arms crossed tightly over her chest. "What's this about?" Frank Daniels demanded. "We had to miss work for this." "Please have a seat," Mr. Barnes said calmly. "We have a serious situation to discuss." Steve saw Jake and his father and looked away quickly. Jake noticed that Steve seemed nervous, not angry like before. "Jake has reported that Steve threatened him with a knife yesterday after school," Mr. Barnes said directly. "This is a very serious accusation." "That's a lie," Steve's mother said immediately. "My son wouldn't do that." Mr. Barnes turned to Steve. "Is it a lie, Steve? Did you threaten Jake with a knife?" Steve looked at his feet. "No," he mumbled. Jake's father spoke up. "My son has never lied to me. If he says there was a knife, there was a knife." Frank Daniels glared at him. "Are you calling my son a liar?" "I'm saying someone isn't telling the truth," Jake's father replied calmly. "And I trust my son." Mr. Barnes raised a hand. "Before this goes further, I should inform you that we have a security camera at the park entrance. The city installed them last year after some vandalism. I've requested the footage from yesterday afternoon." Steve's face went pale. Jake hadn't known about any cameras and felt surprised too. So, Mr. Barnes continued, we'll know the truth soon enough. In the meantime, I need to ask, Steve, do you have a knife in your possession now? Steve looked at his parents, then back at Mr. Barnes. Slowly, he nodded. I need you to give it to me, Mr. Barnes said, extending his hand. Bringing a weapon to school is grounds for immediate suspension. Steve reluctantly reached into his pocket and pulled out the small pocket knife. He placed it on Mr. Barnes's desk. The room was silent for a moment. Then Frank Daniels turned to his son. What were you thinking? Bringing a knife to school? Threatening another student? He made me look stupid, Steve said, his voice small. In front of everyone. He's been showing off, acting like he's better than me. I never tried to make you look stupid, Jake said. I just wanted to be left alone. Mr. Barnes picked up the knife carefully. Steve, you're suspended for 2 weeks. When you return, you'll be on probation for the rest of the semester. One more incident and you'll be expelled. He looked at Steve's parents. I'm also required to report this to the police. Threatening someone with a weapon is a criminal offense. Steve's mother began to cry. Please, he's never been in trouble with the police before. It would ruin his chances for college. Mr. Barnes's expression softened slightly. I understand your concern. If Jake and his father are willing, we might be able to handle this internally, with mandatory counseling for Steve and community service hours. All eyes turned to Jake and his father. Jake looked at Steve, seeing not the bully from yesterday, but a scared teenager who had made a terrible mistake. Dad, Jake said quietly. His father studied Steve for a long moment. If the school handles it properly and if Steve agrees to stay away from Jake, we won't press charges. Relief washed over Steve's face. His father put a hand on his shoulder. Thank you, Frank Daniels said to Jake and his father. And I promise, he will face consequences at home too. Mr. Barnes nodded. Then it's settled. Steve, you're still suspended. I'll expect you in my office every day after school for 2 weeks when you return, to discuss your progress with the counselor. After the meeting, Jake and his father walked to the main hallway. Classes would start soon, and students were beginning to fill the corridors. Are you sure about not pressing charges? Jake's father asked. Jake nodded. I think he learned his lesson, and I don't want to ruin his life over one mistake. His father smiled. Your mother would be proud of you. As they approached Jake's locker, they saw Olivia waiting there. She waved when she spotted Jake. I should go, Jake's father said. Will you be okay? Yeah, Jake said. I think the worst is over. His father hugged him quickly, then headed for the exit. Jake walked over to Olivia. Hey, he said. Hey yourself, she replied. Why are you here so early? And was that your dad? Long story, Jake said. Had a meeting with the principal about Steve. Olivia's eyes widened. What happened? Did he do something? Before Jake could answer, Eric from the boxing club approached them. Miller, I heard Steve. Daniels got suspended. Is that true? News traveled fast in high school. Yeah, it's true, Jake said. What did he do? Olivia asked. Jake hesitated, then decided to tell them. He pulled a knife on me yesterday after school, Olivia gasped. Are you okay? Did he hurt you? I'm fine, Jake assured her. He didn't get a chance to do anything. Eric looked at Jake with new respect. You know, there's a rumor going around that you dodged every punch his friends threw at you. Some kids are saying you're like some kind of ninja or something. Jake laughed nervously. People exaggerate. So it's not true? Olivia asked, looking disappointed. Jake thought about all the years of hiding his abilities, of blending in and staying quiet. Maybe it was time for a change. I wouldn't say I'm a ninja, he said with a small smile. But I might know a few things. And the bell rang, signaling the start of first period. As they walked to class, Jake felt lighter somehow. For the first time since arriving at Westlake High, he didn't feel the need to hide who he really was. 2 weeks passed quickly at Westlake High. Without Steve around, the hallways felt different to Jake. No one bothered him, and he found himself talking more in class and making new friends. Word about what happened with Steve had spread through the school, growing more dramatic with each telling. Some students now said Jake had disarmed Steve with ninja moves, while others claimed he had fought off 10 guys at once. Jake ignored the rumors and focused on his classes. He continued going to the boxing club twice a week, where Coach Phillips had taken a special interest in his training. After seeing Jake's natural ability, the coach had asked him to demonstrate techniques for the newer students. "You've got real talent, Miller," Coach Phillips told him after one session. "How long have you been training?" "About 6 years," Jake admitted. "My dad started teaching me after my mom died. Then I trained at a gym in Colorado." The coach nodded. "I thought so. Your technique is too polished for a beginner. You competed before?" "Some junior championships," Jake said. "Nothing major." "Well, you could do more if you wanted," Coach Phillips said. "But I understand if you don't. Not everyone wants to compete." Jake thought about it. "Maybe. I'll talk to my dad." At lunch that day, Jake sat with Olivia, Ryan, and Eric. They had become his regular group now, accepting him without questions or judgment. Olivia had been especially supportive, often walking with him between classes and texting him in the evenings. "So," Ryan said, taking a bite of his sandwich, "the big basketball game is Friday. You guys coming?" "Wouldn't miss it," Eric replied. He looked at Jake. "You in?" Before Jake could answer, Olivia touched his arm. "Look who's back," she said quietly. Jake turned to see Steve entering the cafeteria. It was his first day back after the suspension. Steve looked different somehow, less confident than before. He got his lunch and sat with only 2 friends, not the larger group he usually commanded. "Heard his parents took away his car and phone for a month," Eric said, "and he has to do community service every weekend." Jake watched Steve for a moment. He got off easy compared to what could have happened. "Because you didn't press charges," Olivia said. "That was kind of you." Jake shrugged. Everyone deserves a second chance. After lunch, Jake was at his locker when he sensed someone approach. He turned to find Steve standing there alone. Jake tensed automatically but relaxed when he saw Steve's posture. "The other boy wasn't there to cause trouble. Can we talk?" Steve asked, his voice quiet. Jake nodded. "Sure. I wanted to say." Steve looked at the floor, then back at Jake. "I'm sorry. For everything. The knife, the bullying, all of it." Jake studied him, trying to judge his sincerity. "Is this part of your counseling, having to apologize?" Steve gave a small laugh. "Yeah, but that doesn't mean I don't mean it." He paused. "My dad and I had a long talk. He said I was becoming someone he didn't recognize. Someone he was ashamed of. That hit hard, you know?" Jake nodded. He understood the importance of a father's approval. "Anyway," Steve continued, "I just wanted you to know I'm sorry, and it won't happen again. To you or anyone else." Jake extended his hand. "Clean slate?" Steve looked surprised but shook Jake's hand. "Thanks, man." He started to walk away, then turned back. "By the way, those moves in the park, where did you learn to fight like that?" Jake smiled slightly. "My dad taught me, and some good trainers in Colorado." "You're pretty good," Steve admitted. Would you maybe show me sometime, not to fight people or anything, just, for fitness and stuff?" Jake considered the request. A month ago, he would have refused immediately, but now he saw it differently. "Come to the boxing club on Thursday. Coach Phillips is a good teacher." Steve nodded. "Maybe I will." He walked away, looking lighter somehow. That afternoon, Jake told his father about Steve's apology when he got home. "Sounds like he might have learned something," his father said as they prepared dinner together. "That's good. Some people never do." "He asked me to teach him some moves," Jake said, chopping vegetables. His father raised an eyebrow. "And what did you say?" "I told him to come to the boxing club," Jake replied. "Coach Phillips can teach him the basics." His father nodded. "Good answer. Teaching someone to fight is a big responsibility." They ate dinner while discussing an upcoming martial arts tournament in a nearby city. Jake's father thought he should consider competing again. "It's been almost 2 years since your last tournament," he said. "Maybe it's time." Jake thought about it. "Maybe. I'll think about it." That night, Jake got a text from Olivia asking if he wanted to study for their history test together the next day. He agreed, feeling a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with fighting or bullies. On Thursday, Jake arrived at the boxing club early to help Coach Phillips set up. To his surprise, Steve showed up 10 minutes later, looking nervous but determined. "You came," Jake said. Steve nodded. "Yeah, my counselor thought it was a good idea too. Channel my energy in a positive way or something like that." Coach Phillips walked over. "Daniels, here to train?" "Yes, sir," Steve said. "If that's okay." The coach looked at Jake, who nodded slightly. "All right," Coach Phillips said. "But I have rules in my club: no fighting outside this room, no bullying, no disrespect. Break any of those and you're out. Understand?" "Yes, sir," Steve repeated. "Good. Miller, show him how to wrap his hands." Jake spent the next hour teaching Steve the basics. The other boy was a quick learner, focused and respectful. By the end of the session, Steve was throwing decent jabs at a punching bag while Jake held it steady. "Not bad for your first day," Jake said as they finished. Steve wiped sweat from his forehead. "Thanks. This is harder than it looks." "It gets easier," Jake promised. "Just takes practice." After the club ended, Jake walked out with Eric and Steve. In the parking lot, they found Olivia waiting with Ryan. "We're going for pizza," Olivia said. "Want to come?" Jake looked at the group, including Steve. There was an awkward moment as everyone realized the strange situation, the former bully and his target now standing together without hostility. "I'm in if everyone else is," Jake said, making the decision easy for them all. Ryan shrugged. "Fine with me." "Cool," Eric added. Olivia smiled at Jake, understanding what he was doing. "Great, let's go." As they walked to Ryan's car, Jake felt his phone vibrate. It was a text from his father. "Going to be late tonight, left dinner in the fridge." Jake replied, "Going for pizza with friends. Be home by 9. His father responded immediately, "Friends? Good, have fun." Jake smiled and put his phone away. For the first time since his mother died, he felt like he belonged somewhere. Westlake High had started as just another school, another place to blend in until they moved again. But now it felt different. It felt like home. In the pizza place, Jake sat between Olivia and Steve, listening to Ryan talk about the upcoming basketball game. The conversation flowed easily, with even Steve joining in occasionally. When the topic turned to summer plans, Jake realized he wanted to stay here. No more moving, no more being the new kid, no more hiding who he was. "So, Jake," Olivia asked, "what are you doing this summer?" Jake thought about the martial arts tournament his father had mentioned. He thought about Coach Phillips's offer to train more seriously. He thought about all the things he had been afraid to do before when staying invisible had been his goal. "I'm thinking of competing again," he said. "In mixed martial arts." "Seriously?" Eric asked. "That's awesome." "Will we get to watch?" Olivia asked, her eyes bright with interest. Jake smiled. "If you want to." "Count me in," she said, and the others nodded in agreement. As they continued talking and laughing, Jake felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in years. The new student, once targeted by bullies, had found his place, not by fighting, though he could have won easily, but by showing restraint, mercy, and friendship. That, his father would say, was the true victory.